Video from the MicroStrategy Rooster. Today's topic is going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about manipulating the data or using partitioning in the data to make our reports or our dashboards a lot faster. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the types of partition mapping and how MicroStrategy utilizes them. So you probably already noticed that under Schema object you have a partition mapping folder and you wonder maybe what that was for. So I'm going to show you the two ways that you can create partition mapping, and I'll talk about the different ways to create in the metadata and outside the metadata different structures. I'm just going to use simple examples, but I'll elaborate on how you can expand them. Okay, so partition mapping is a schema object. Obviously it's at the data level, and what it is conceptually is if you have a large table, like a large fact table for let's assume sales table, or you're running a hospital and you have a lot of patient information. So what you want to do is you don't want your report to always go and hit that large fact table. So what you could do is you could partition it by year. For instance, you could have for every year a new partition or a new table. And this is not partitioning your view. There's no benefit of partitioning the view table. What you want to partition is the actual table. And what you want to do also is allow your partition to kind of be balanced. So if you have year, for instance, and you have a lot of data, balancing your data by year is very useful. But if you have geography and you want to, let's say you have information around 50 states and you want to break it by the states, you have to think about it. Is your data balanced, or is your information, does it make sense to be broken by states? You get a better balance by age, for instance. So you got to think about what kind of partition really gives you the better performance. What kind of partition breaks your information into more buckets? And also you want to think about partitions is usability. For example, if all your users are always running data against the last year of information, so partitioning by year might not get you much because your users are anyway hitting the last year, so you might want to partition by month. Okay, so you got to think about it, make those decisions. So the first thing I want to talk about is partitioning at the data warehouse level, and then we'll talk about partitioning at the metadata level. So to partition at the data warehouse level, first of all, you have to have your DBA or yourself, in our case, create a table. So let's look at a generic table called population, and I'm using a simple example. I said I have 2 years of data and a population. You can break this down. Obviously, in a real example, you'd have state, for instance, you'd have country. You might have some other columns that allow you to break your data even to more granular level. But I'm just using the basic example to show you how to create the partition. So for instance, here I only have 2 rows, but what if I had like hundreds of thousands of rows for 2013 and hundreds of thousands of rows for 2014, and I don't want, whenever I run my report, I don't want it to hit this population table, which would have a lot of rows in this case. Alright, so what do I do? Well, the thing is simple conceptually. I'm going to choose all the rows, if I want to partition by year, that have a year ID 2013, and I have all the rows for 2014, break them into 2 tables. It can't get more basic than that. The concept is you choose a column or multiple columns, and you break your information across them. That's exactly what I did. I took this simple table and I broke it into 2. One part had only 2013 data, and another one had 2014 data. Okay? In my case, it was only 1 row, 2 in the overall. But in a reality case, this could be 1 million. This could be 500,000, and this could be another 500,000 rows. So that's when you start seeing the benefit. But for demo, this will do the job. So again, I have a year, which is my partition column. So year 2013 to 14. And this is just my fact or my metric, okay? And again, you can have a lot more than just this. So I created, or my DBA created from population 2 new tables. Okay, what do I need? What else do I need? Well, I need a way to tell MicroStrategy that these 2 tables will create or will be used together to play the role of this table. How do I do that? At the database level, this is what I need to do. You need to create a new table, or your DBA creates a new table. So I'm using access for simplicity, but obviously you are probably going to be using a scripted tool. And I need to create a column. And remember, this column has to represent that partition. And I'm going to stress this, and I can't stress it any stronger than saying, if your name here does not match this ID or this column name here exactly, it has to match. No typos, no extra spaces, nothing. It won't recognize it in MicroStrategy. So this is key, that you get the names right. Here, you want to create another one, a text column. This is the part where MicroStrategy needs you also to be particular. PBT name, partition, base, table, name. Okay, just use these two, or this concept of using the PBT name and the attribute or attributes that you're partitioning by. Okay, get that down, then your life is easy. What do you do here? Well, let's see. For 2013, you need to tell it to go to our table called population 2013. You need 1 row per partition table. Okay, so this is not complex. If you had to do it on your own, you could. And for 2014, population. Again, any typos here will cause problems in MicroStrategy for you later. Okay, so there we go. For year ID 13, 14, we have population 2013, population. Okay, so I'm done. At this point, I'm done with. So let me save. Go back and let me save my work. Okay. It's asking what do I want to call the table. Let's call it PBT population. In this part, you can name it whatever you want. So I'm going to call it partition base table for population. Okay. Boom. We're done. So let me close these so I don't get myself confused with too many windows. Okay. So now with MicroStrategy, what do I need to do? Log in as an architect or developer with Warehouse Catalog. Access. Go to your Warehouse Catalog. You will notice that here's my original table, here's my 2 partitions, and here's my partition mapping table. Okay? So what do I need to do? Well, I don't want to use the big table, assuming it was a big table. I don't want to pull these individually, or I might not recognize them if they're obscure names. But what I know is that this is the mapping that matters. Notice what is going to happen. Look here, we got this and these, and look what happens when I try to move it in. And notice something. Alright, notice the 2 partitions disappeared as well. Why? Because MicroStrategy saw that name, PBT name column, and it saw that the year ID matched in 2 other tables which had the matching PBT names, and automatically it pulls everything in. Okay? So look here, if you say view partitions, right click view partitions, it'll say, this guy has got these 2 contained within it. So MicroStrategy is smart enough to, that's why the naming and the syntax and the spelling was all important when we were creating at the database level. So now you understand why. We're done with this part. Let's save and close. Okay. Give it a second to map. And again, this is you don't do this a lot, but when you do it, you want to make sure that there's no errors. It says remember, now you need to go and utilize this PBT population table that you created. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. So we'll close this. Alright, So I'm going to build stuff in my reports. Okay. Notice let me just show you this. In partition, under schema object partition, you should start seeing your partition. Okay. Great. So it moved in. It succeeded at least in moving it in. The first thing you want to do is create the attributes, right? So I'm not just going to create new attributes based on these partition. The attribute that I'm going to create, and also notice it's only going to list the partition. It's not going to list the bases. So that's great. So I'm going to say by year ID. Let's make it manual. Okay. So my year ID is my attribute. Great. Save and close. And I'll just leave it to call it year. Alright. Great. I'm also going to create a metric for my population. So what do I need first? I first need a fact to sum the population, right? So here's my fact. Okay. Save and close. I've got a fact. All I need now is a metric. Alright, let me drag my fact. Just trying to do it the easy way. Save and close. I'll call it population. Save. Alright, what else do I need? I need a report, right? So let me use a report, new. Don't run the report yet. It's not going to work, but actually I might. Alright, so year, population. Alright, save and close. Don't run it because you did not update the schema and you did not map the logical partition. So let's call it partition test report. Okay. My partition test report. Great. So what do I need to do? I need to update the schema. Alright. Now you still are missing one piece. This is mapped to the partition. These are mapped to the partition. But my thread doesn't run the SQL off a partition because the partition, the PBT table, is not an actual fact table. It's just the mapping table. So you need to do one more step. You need to go here. This is critical. Right click, edit the partition. Okay. And great. If you need to see what you're mapping, here's your information in your partition year and PBT name, and we have that ID column hanging around. Okay. So it's trying to tell you which attributes you might need to map. So let's go to the logical view and you click here on the attribute icon. Alright, and you scroll to your partition attribute, okay? The one we created. If you don't know which one it is, go back and double check. So here it is, and it'll give it a partition logical size. You could also change it if you want, okay? So got this down. You can edit also if you want to add more attributes if you have multiple partitions, okay? Save and close. Alright, before I run the report, I need to update the schema one last time. And if everything I did was correct, I didn't make any typos, which is possible, I mean we're human, but you know, you'll find out at this point. So let's run it. Alright, so it succeeded. Let's visit our SQL. Okay, it's got a bunch of jargon here. Should let me change. Let's see. That's small enough. Okay. Alright, so let me walk you through the SQL quickly, but let me change the way it looks because I'm more comfortable with a different join type from the VLDP. You probably know how to do this. Okay, save and close. Alright, there we go. So what's happening here? It's creating a partition for us, and it's populating the partition And because it's a direct select and sum from the partition, grouping by year, there's really nothing much to it. But let me just make it a little bit more interesting. Let's go to the design view, and I'm going to create a filter on year. Now in this case we only have 2 years, 2 partitions, but let's assume you had 10 years and you only wanted to see the last 2 years. So you do this, ID, and let me do it greater than, let's do greater than, let's say 2012, which will give us, assume you had 10 years back, okay? I'm just going to show you why the SQL, or how the SQL starts to look like with more data. Okay, so here we go. Let's look at the SQL. Alright, so let's walk through this step by step. In the first pass, it's saying give me the partition name, PBT name, from the PBT name table, okay, where all the year IDs are greater. So this is awesome, because if I had 10 years of data, it's saying, well, I just need those 2 rows, in this case, 13 and 14. So it drops the partitions that I don't need from the get-go. And then it says, give me each one of them. So it's going to create a new pass for each. So where, see here it says, where the, or from the population 2000, so it grabs one partition that matches this, and it grabs another partition that maps it. So depending on the number of partitions that match, it starts pulling one at a time. Great, then what does it do? Well, it's putting them in this temp table. Okay, it's bundling them up or unioning. Okay, depending on your VLTP setting, you might even see a union. So here we go. So this table, this temporary table, is taking the grant information from this partition and stacking it together, and the result is a sum on the population column from this temporary table grouped by the year ID. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted it to do. Let me show you one more step. Let's go to the design. What if I did this? Greater than 2013. Do we see, are we going to see all of the passes or part? You probably already know what the answer is, but let's run it so we can refresh the SQL, and we know where we're going to get one row. But let's look at this, and this is what I like about MicroStrategy, the way it does this. So remember this whole condition about PBT being greater than your condition, where the filter is 13? Well, now it knows it's only going to pull one data. So there was not even a temp table built here. It just went straight into your report and created that data, because it said, okay, I only have one partition that matched this filter, or prompt. You could have it prompted. And it says, okay, I'm just going to create a simple SQL based on this. So here we use part of the whole fact table to satisfy this partition. Perfect, optimized, it can't get better than this, okay? So there you go. That's the simple data warehouse partitioning. Alright, so now I'm going to go do the partition in a different way. But before I do that, I want to delete everything I created, okay? I'll start all over, but I want to do it in a different way, okay? So let's delete these. Remember to delete the metric before the fact. Okay? And I could remove it from the warehouse catalog or just straight delete. Okay? Perfect. I'll update my schema so I don't get any junk left. Update. Okay, so my partition is gone now. So, okay, now let's talk about the partitioning using the metadata. In this case, unlike the previous case with data warehouse partitioning, you actually will go ahead and map the partitions. So instead of using the population as a fact table, you will be able to use the partitions. So you select whichever partition or partitions you want. Let's just select both of them for now and see what we can do. Okay. So we got both, we save and close. Now let's create a manual partition, but before we do that, let's create the attribute. So let's just create the objects first, and then we'll go one step at a time. So what we're trying to do here is not use that partition-based table, which is actually more optimal, but let's create this and show you the difference. Okay, so the attribute, I'm going to use year from those two portions. So there we go, year, it's automatic. Then fact. Population, automatic, great, metric, and the metric comes from population. I'm just going to drag and drop. I'm moving fast, but you already know what I'm doing, so it's not a big deal. Because I'm just redoing what I did previously, but I'm mapping it differently. And let me refresh the schema before I create. Now we're going to create the partition, but we don't have a partition mapping table. Remember, we didn't map any table. So let me just create it here for tests or for demo sakes. It's not showing, it's at the bottom. You'll see an option for partition. There it is. And let's partition on one table at a time. Slice it by the year. Okay. Where the ID, I think we chose 2013. And then we add another partition. Okay, 2014, oops, year, ID 2014, save and close. Great, we got both. And let's call it population by year partition table. Let's try to give it a name that allows us to track it easier. Alright, update the schema. Unfortunately, you have to do the update schema frequently when you're doing things with the schema layer, so just be patient. Don't forget to do that, and if you do, you'll get errors, which is easy to fix, so no big deal. But doing it the right from the beginning makes your life easier. So year, and let's put population. Let's create a prompt on the year. So let me just say ID is prompted. Okay, finish. Okay, and let's run the report. Let's test it for 2013, see what happens. Alright, let's look at the SQL, see what went on. We didn't make any errors, it should be easy and straightforward. Okay, so it says, okay, I need to match, so there's this pre-SQL kind of mapping where it's allowing us to identify which population, which part of the which table to use. So because we have that condition or our prompt 2013, so it's going to find the portion that matches that population 2013 table where the year ID is also 2013. It's going to bring that table and reuse it. This doesn't make sense here because it's saying this and this. You're looking at anything. Why? Well, one is coming from the filter and one is from the level in the partition. But if you have multiple levels, then this becomes more dynamic, sort of like a matrix starts crossing different items together. Okay, so this is basically how what we're just doing a simple selection